Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Hub back in the video today, and today the Houston Texans beat the Tennessee Titans 26-3. As the Texans get their business done today, CJ Stroud comes back, and I like how, sure, he threw over 30 pass attempts in this ball game, but it kind of felt like Stroud didn't have to do too much. He didn't have to throw any deep balls. He threw a couple. It was his workload I felt was pretty easy, and especially going up against the Titans team. Texans were playing from ahead in this ball game, up 20-0 in the second quarter with 4 minutes remaining, up 20-3 at halftime. So I think that for first game back for Stroud, I thought his workload was really easy in this game, and threw 24 for 32 with 213 passing yards and one passing touchdown. Obviously, the Texans had some red zone struggles with Kaimi Fairbairn, with the Texans 0 for 3, not 0 for 3 in the red zone, but because they did score one touchdown in the red zone. But besides that, the Texans were 1 for 4 in the red zone today. Fairbairn had a 38-yard field goal, a 27-yard field goal, and a 28-yard field goal. 4 total field goals on the day. Even Sheldon Rankins, defensive tackle, was actually questionable for this game, had a 13-yard touchdown fumble return. Will Levis, quarterback, got hurt in this one and was carted off. Hopefully he's okay. Even though these two teams are in the same division, I never want to see a young quarterback like that get injured that way and get carted off. Wishing the best for him. But the Texans win, the Jaguars win, the Colts win. All teams are 9-7 going into the last week of the season. Texans play the Colts. Jaguars play the Titans, with Trevor Lawrence unsure if he will play or not. So I think it's going to be a very interesting last week in the AFC South with the Texans and the Colts and the Titans and the Jaguars. Let's go to the scoring summary from this game. First quarter, you have one score. Kaimi Fairbairn from 28 yards, it's 3-0. Then CJ Stroud throws a 12-yard touchdown pass to Brevin Jordan, it's 10-0. Sheldon Rankins gets a 13-yard fumble return, it's 17-0. Kaimi Fairbairn gets a 38-yard field goal, it's 20-0. Nick Folk then going into halftime makes a 53-yard field goal. It's 23 at half. Third quarter, fourth quarter, only 2 scores, 2 field goals for Fairbairn. 27 yards with 9 minutes remaining. It's 23-3. And then 51 yards from Fairbairn with 5 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. It's 26-3. Game leaders, Ryan Tannehill came in after Levis got hurt. He threw 16 for 20 with 168 passing yards. CZ Stroud threw 24 for 32 with 213 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. Then rushing yards. Derrick Henry had 12 carries for 42 rushing yards. In 2 games against the Texans this year, Henry only has like 51 rushing yards. He would get times, prime Derrick Henry against the Texans, he would get 51 times 3, if not more than that. He would destroy, not most matchups, he would clear 130 and maybe even 150. He had multiple games against the Texans where I think if not, I know there was 1 or 2 games where he did get 200 rushing yards against us, one for sure, and there was multiple games where he cleared 150. But this year, the Texans did a good job stopping him. Number 1, this Texans defense has gotten better. That's one thing. Number 2, Derrick Henry's starting to age a little bit, but 12 carries for 42 rushing yards. Devin Singletary had 16 carries for 80 rushing yards. Receiving yards, DeAndre Hopkins, 7 receptions for 72 receiving yards in his first game back in Houston. Nico Collins, the new Texans wide receiver, 1 with 7 receptions for 80 receiving yards. So both receivers had 7 receptions. Collins just had 8 more. Yards. Levis, before he got hurt, threw 2 for 6 with 16 passing yards and was sacked once. Besides Henry, the Titans only ran for 11 other rushing yards. Dameon Pierce had 8 carries for 16 yards. Nico Collins had 1 carry for 7 yards. Stroud ran for 4 yards. And John Mechie ran for 4 yards as well. Besides Nico, 4 receptions and 58 receiving yards for Brevin Jordan. Both tight ends for the Texans both had 2 receptions for 19 receiving yards, Brevin Jordan and Dalton Schultz. But Jordan did have a receiving touchdown. Noah Brown had 1 reception for 8 receiving yards. John Mechie had 1 reception for 8 receiving yards. Xavier Hutchinson had 2 receptions for 8 receiving yards. Devin Singletary had 3 receptions for 6 receiving yards. And Dameon Pierce had 1 reception for 5 receiving yards. Fumbles in this game. Will Levis did lose a fumble in this game. It was recovered by Sheldon Rankins and returned for a touchdown. Nico Collins did fumble in this game after a reception, but it did go out of bounds. All right, tackles, defensive stats. Desmond King, the second, led the Texans in tackles with 8 today. Derek Barnett continues to look great for the Texans with 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 tackle for loss. Texans had 6 sacks on the day with 8 tackles for loss. You have 1.5 sacks for Derek Barnett, a half sack for Kurt Heinisch. So that adds up to 2 sacks right there. Then you had 2 sacks for Will Anderson Jr. He had a great day for the Texans. 1 sack for Sheldon Rankings. 1 sack for Jerry Hughes. And I'm pretty sure that was it for the Texans sacks today. I don't think I'm missing anybody else. Kareem Jackson made his return to Houston today, and as his first game back with the Texans, only had 1 tackle. And other tackles for loss, Derek Stingley Jr. had a tackle for loss. Derek Barnett had a tackle for loss. Christian Harris had a tackle for loss. Heinisch also had 1. Anderson Jr. and Sheldon Rankins both had 2. Total team had 8 tackles for loss. For the Titans, they only had 1 sack. That was Harold Landry III. And they had 5 tackles for loss. Landry III had 3 out of the 5, and 2 of the other went to Roger McCreary. And no interceptions in this ball game. Kick returns, Damian Pierce had 1 kick return for 21 yards. Texans punt returns, Desmond King II made 2 punt returns for 30 yards. His longest was 19. Great win for the Texans as they win this one 26-3, and they still have a little bit of a chance to win this division. If they beat the Colts and the Jaguars lose to the Titans, not sure if Trevor Lawrence will play, the Texans will win the AFC South. Now, what happens if the Texans lose to the Colts? The Texans probably won't make the playoffs. There would be a little bit of a chance for the Texans. If the Texans were to lose, they would probably need some help, but maybe could win, maybe could make it into the playoffs as a wild card, but would be one of the last wild card. Probably be the 7th seed, but I doubt if the Texans lose to the Colts, they're in. But if the Texans beat the Colts, let's just say the Jags win against the Titans, and we don't win the division, we're still in. A win against the Colts gets us in the playoffs for sure. But a win against the Colts and then the Jaguars loss gets us into the playoffs and gives us a home game in the playoffs as well, with winning the division and being the 4 seed. All right, let me know your thoughts on the game, or very well could be the 3 seed as well, depending what happens with Kansas City in that division, the AFC West. So could be the 4-3 seed if Jacksonville loses and the Texans win. That's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts, and peace out. Go Texans.